I broke my back.
What do you mean by that?
My back is broken.
Your back is broken.
Spinal. Spinal.
Your back is broken.
Spinal. Spinal.
Breathe out and tighten down.
Spinal.
Breathe out.
Breathe out. Breathe out.
Spinal.
Your back
I broke my back. My back is broken. Tess, help me.
Spinal.
What's up, guys? Enkiri here, and today we're gonna ruffle some feathers. Well, I guess that we're gonna ruffle some more feathers because we've already ruffled a whole bunch of them these last couple weeks, talking about why I don't like bodybuilding and why I don't like powerlifting. So many feathers and so little time. Today we're going to talk about cheat rows, though. Cheat rows, you guys have all seen them. Many of you are going to be proponents of them. And today I'm going to argue that they are a waste of your training time. Collective gasp. I know. Let's break it down and I'll make my argument and then you guys can decide for yourselves how you feel about them. Alright, so the cheat row. These have been nicknamed Rubish Rows, named after Pete Rubish, who's a freak of nature. He's deadlifted over 900 pounds in the gym. In more recent history, Cailer has become a proponent of them as well. I believe George Leeman has also advocated for this style, or at least a similar style of cheat rowing in the past. And another notable proponent of lots of body English cheat style rowing is big Ronnie Coleman, though I do wonder if he's had a change of heart regarding movements like that in recent years, just given how things have been going for him in particular. But so what do all these guys have in common? Well, for starters, they all have or had absolutely massive deadlifts, right? Secondly, they were also all on PEDs, perhaps copious amounts of them. So what could that mean? We'll get to that a little bit more later on in the video. What I want to focus on today, mostly though, I want to focus primarily on Rubish and Woolam, as those are the two guys who, at least in recent years, have really popularized this movement the most, especially in the sense of using it kind of as assistance work, as accessory work for the deadlift, as a means of actually building a stronger deadlift. And so just the concept of barbell rows where you absolutely go ham in terms of body English and using that as an accessory movement for building the deadlift. Popularize. So that's kind of the context, that's kind of the lens that we're going to be looking at this movement through in today's video. And so let's just watch these guys do these rows real quick. Now let's watch it again, but this time in slow motion, and let's see what we can see. So in both cases here, the lifter stood up almost completely with the weight. Before they heaved it up, their body, their torso was almost perfectly erect. So essentially, they've actually just performed an aggressive sub-maximal deadlift. Now, yes, they're heaving that weight around because they're both 900-pound deadlifters. And this is only about 500 pounds, which is relatively light for them. So the question is, are they 900-pound deadlifters because they built a 500-pound cheat row? Or can they cheat row 500 pounds because they're 900-pound deadlifters? I'm going to go with the latter here, because the reality is, if we look at this movement, if we break it down, they essentially just pretty much deadlifted this weight. They stood up almost completely with the bar, and then when they bend forward again at the waist, they're just doing that essentially to approximate a finished rowing position. But when they do that, the difference in bar displacement from when they were almost completely upright versus when they rebend at the waist, it's actually pretty minimal. And in reality, the difference, that extra displacement, is actually basically only a consequence of the momentum that had already been imparted on the bar by the posterior chain prior to them bending forward again at the waist. So it's almost like a really brute forced low pull type of lift. So what can we say about all this? Well, for starters, you need to understand that you aren't these guys. These guys are fucking freaks of nature, man. And that's not to say that maybe you won't be the next freak of nature, but I'm going to argue that these guys would have all actually gotten to the same place in the end, the same place that they are now, even if they'd never done a cheat row in their life. Because it's pretty clear by watching the mechanics of what is going on here that, for one, they aren't gaining the benefits of rowing from doing this really at all. They are gaining the benefits of performing an explosive sub-maximal deadlift, but in the process, they're also probably creating undue stress on the lower back by kind of humping the air to reach the barbell again and make the movement look more like a row. Okay, fine. So with that in mind, what would I suggest then? In my opinion, you would get all the benefits that these guys are getting here simply by performing sub-maximal deadlifts with a focus on maximal acceleration and maximal bar speed, or even like speed pulls in the same sense that they've been advocated by Louis Simmons and his conjugate style training from Westside Barbell. Maybe even with accommodating resistance, such as bands. That would force you to generate that same level of power and momentum in the lockout position to overcome the accommodating resistance. The same kind of concept that these guys are doing here by performing this cheat row, that extra little oomph at the end of the movement. The difference would be that you wouldn't be creating this undue jarring effect on the lower back by deliberately creating this sort of ballistic force against the bar in order to get your torso back into the rowing position at the end of the movement, the supposed end of the rep. As well, you would also actually get the benefits of practicing the specific deadlift movement pattern with submaximal weights. So you could focus with that, you could focus on really buttoning up little details on your deadlift, really honing and perfecting every aspect of your deadlifting form while still having that permission to pull balls to the wall with maximal aggression, maximal power, and maximal speed. Further, I would then recommend adding in strict rowing movements to complement this work, preferably chest-supported rowing varieties such as seal rows and even machine variations of chest-supported rows. So with these types of movements, you're able to ensure that it isn't body English that's allowing you to row the weight, but that rather that you are actually rowing the weight via contraction and engagement of the muscles that control the upper arm and the scapula. So now you're still able to create that hypertrophy and that strength in the back muscles through a dynamic movement. And then with the speed deadlifts, you'd also be getting an extra high quality sub-maximal deadlifting volume with that large focus on aggression and acceleration to satisfy more of that power component, but also as extra technique work as well. And in my opinion, this would actually set you up for better results in the long term as compared to using the cheat rows to satisfy this requirement. Finally, before I close, I alluded to PEDs at the beginning of this video, and I truly think that that plays a role as well, a role in the people who see success with this sort of a process. All these guys are massive deadlifters, right? And they have the assistance of drugs to help nudge their progress along. Heavy deadlifting is notoriously draining on the body to the point where you can actually see pretty large fluctuations in deadlifting strength in very short periods of time if you're not programming things properly. And then the stronger that you get at the movement, the more important that concept becomes and the greater those potential fluctuations could be. These cheat rows allow these guys who have massive deadlifts to still push things to what they perceive to be the limit in that training session, but then it allows them to do this without incurring that massive systemic drain that just seems to occur as a consequence of frequent heavy deadlifting. So in some ways, the cheat row, it actually probably ends up being a break for their bodies kind of in totality when you look at the whole picture, which allows them to keep their training volume up and then have their heavy deadlift sessions end up being more productive. But again, I still think that most of them, and as a consequence, definitely most of us, would still be able to get at a minimum the same results, but probably actually better results by focusing on stricter rowing movements and then just using those sub-maximal deadlifts that I was talking about earlier with the focus on perfect form and high acceleration of the bar against accommodating resistance. And those big guys, those cheat rowers, they could probably even use more weight this way on a submax deadlift as compared to a cheat row without incurring any additional fatigue. And then for you as a non-enhanced athlete, this concept is actually going to become even more important because recovery from jarring movements like this becomes less of a certainty without the use of exogenous hormones, especially the older that you get. And then the training itself also needs to be more dialed in without the PEDs, or progress will simply cease to take place if you're doing things suboptimally. In my opinion, movements like this, like the cheat row, they're simply haphazard, and they don't really end up being a productive use of time or resources for most trainees. Anyway, that about wraps it up for today, guys. Let me know what you guys all think in the comments down below. Please remember to hit the like button before you go, subscribe to my channel, leave me some love, all that good stuff. Check out EnkiriEliteFitness.com for online coaching and training programs. Be sure to sign up for my Patreon and keep training hard. I'll catch you guys next time.